Welcome to what I call Jesus TV, although Emily and Jonathan are welcome to frame it however they want. We do have a program called Jesus in This Mess. Jesus in This Mess. Yes, that's what it is. We're still ironing out, like, what is this? And so we're still learning. Is it Mr. Rogers' neighborhood or the neighborhood of Mr. Rogers? I think we'll just go with Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, but that's not the name of this. This is Jesus in This Mess, and we're going to watch Emily make messes with her fingers and other tools, and doing it in the name of Jesus, which is really cool. Making a mess in the name of Jesus. Jesus, I'm going to go make a mess for you. I hope I can find you in it. So, anyways, that's just to kick us off. You guys start off any topics you have, or we'll just maybe Emily can tell us what she's going to do. That'd be good.
Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I left this board on here from last week, and I'm going to try to get it off. Yeah, I got some little paint on there. That's okay. That'll be cool.
And you see, she got notes on the back of those paintings. So
I do.
Emily's art and Jesus's art can't be accessed fully without turning it over.
Yeah, some of the things I know, right? So this is the one I've been writing on for I've been layering this one for 3 weeks. It's still, still don't know where it's gonna go. But it kind of ended last week. Actually, Jonathan and I had a pretty interesting discussion about organized religion. But one of the things, because he was like, "What are you painting about?" And I'm like, "I just feel stuck, in the world of Jesus, and just not knowing where to go or where I belong, and trying to find the place for me and my family." And but one of the things, some of the notes that I wrote from last week, I wrote down. It's hard to know the direction or to know what is truth, and is there an absolute truth or not. And then that was kind of an interesting topic that we could talk about. We also talked about the idea of fallibility versus infallibility in religions. That's like with organized religion. And we also talked about the importance of learning through open discussions. Nice. Which is one of the reasons why we like doing something why I like doing something like this, is just because it is an open discussion. And I feel fairly comfortable to talk about most things religiously here. I would say I don't talk about everything, but I'm just trying to be sensitive to our audience, right? But I think, yeah, those are kind of the things do any of those ideas kind of stand out to you guys, or do you have another thought?
No, I like them. I like them. I wasn't able to be part of that because I had to do a formal religious thing myself. I had to get ready for a formal religious. So I have some thoughts on that I've shared in my street preaching. And when I started developing a personal relationship with Jesus, I had to resolve some energy that I've had my entire life, which was, not only do I have a problem with organized religion, but organized anything. So that's what Jesus is like. You don't have a problem with organized religion. You have a problem with organized anything. And we live in a very formal society. There's never been on earth a society that is so formal and organized. And that's why Jesus has me referred to a U.S. Antichrist, all is well in Zion, Babylon culture. It's a culture that is choking right now the younger generation. They don't, it's kind of like being lactose intolerant, where they're intolerant of this. And this has happened before. It's like in the late 60s, early 70s, that kind of came to a head in the Jesus revolution, where you had hippies, interested in free love and LSD and so forth, but also just sweet love. But then their counterparts, the evangelicals, who Jesus sent out to do the call and response. So the call was, all you need is love. And they said, and love has a name. Its name's Jesus. And so those forces that is the force of formality, will often cause certain people to recoil, to rebel, if you will. You bring enough force, try to do that in your own family. You got these 5 rules. You go, "Ooh, I love our 5 rules because they control our home so well. I'm glad we instituted these." Oh, really? Well, go ahead and add another 5 and see what happens. because any parent who's parented long enough knows if you can get your kids to do 5 things, that's sweet consistently. But if you do what parents, oh, they so often do this, they're like, oh, sweet. All we have to do is make some more commandments. And then, but what you're doing is actually a reflection of what happens in your culture. If you add too much, the natural being just can't handle that. And it's like, oh, it looks like I'm in a prison. Yeah, but those 5 rules, did you see how much love and harmony they brought to us? And then you start worshiping the rules instead of like, you know what, maybe we ought to just stay with the 5 and just be saying hallelujah, which you should, because some parents can't get their kids to follow even one rule if there's a rule. But sometimes those kids have become antagonistic towards the formalities. And so that's what I've always had. I was born with this, what in some of the movies Jesus has me make, it's called a cultural allergy, that you're allergic to the culture, whereas everybody else has always been able to eat peanut butter cookies. Grandma and grandpa, they ate peanut butter cookies. What's wrong with Greg? I think he's making it up. I've got an allergy to this culture. I can't sit still and listen to didactic instruction for 3 hours. Are you kidding me? I'm gonna go bonkers. Well, it worked for us. What's wrong with that? And so they get defensive and they try to say, well, here's how I do it. I just sit there and grin and bear it. Well, I can't. I don't know why. It's like I've got irritable bowel syndrome. It just makes me want to vomit. Well, don't talk about our culture that way. Oh, I thought it was okay to talk nasty about the culture, but not the church. And so, one of the things Jesus has had to do, because it isn't good to talk nasty about a lot of things. You'll be filled with nastiness, because guess what nasty seeks? Love seeks love, filth seeks filth, and nastiness seeks nastiness. So I've had a big issue that I've had to learn how to resolve more peacefully. And it was Jesus in 2015. He gave me a prophecy. It's called the Black Sheep Prophecy. And if anyone wants that, I can send it to him. But basically, he told me, yeah, Greg, you are like the people who left the church, like a black sheep. He goes, yes, that's why it's called the Black Sheep Prophecy. That you are like your friends, like Steve Sanders, Bruce Brinkerhoff. Yeah, they were shown the door. And you, from your sociology training, know you can show people the door without saying, there's the door, leave. You just simply make it uncomfortable enough, like parents could do. You can make your home uncomfortable enough with 10 rules. Now let's put 20. Oh, and look at that. We're separating the wheat from the tares. Okay, now all the siblings here are the good siblings. All the other ones have left the building. And so formal institutions, like we're kind of like the peak right now, where there's this rebellion going on within church, within society, and the squeeze is affecting people who have a sensitivity like, no, give me liberty or give me death, which is really what ties into my own response, is that some people's their main in the Star Trek they call it the prime directive. When I came to Earth, there's 3 directives that guide our human agency. We all want belonging. Yes, we all want belonging. We want to belong to somebody. We want somebody to love, and we also want power. We want power to enact, but we also want freedom, and those are differentially distributed amongst people. So, for instance, my wife wants belonging above all things, above power. She'll give up power. She'll give up freedom to have belonging. I, on the other hand, am very strong on my need for freedom, and it will overrule the gathering of power, the gathering of belonging. Okay, I'm just going to have some people not be my friends, and I'm going to have to lose some money so that I can have freedom. Give me freedom or give me death. And so I was tuned that way. If Jesus tunes people before they come to earth, he's like, it'll always feel like dissonance. You'll always feel like you're a stranger in a strange land unless you can enact freedom. And then, of course, he reminded me as he shoved me down the chute. And remember, Greg, I am the way, the truth, and the light. So if you want freedom, the truth will set you free. And that's my name, Truth, which is freedom. And so when in 2015 I got born again, I got a big dose of Jesus, and that was more freedom than I'd ever had. And like, whoa, I've got this guy who's invisible. He's starting to boss me around, and I'm feeling freer than I ever have. and that has stunned me ever since. That I'm following what these People call them commandments, and that sounds kind of harsh to people. Follow the commandments. Jesus instructed me recently. He says, you can also call them just instructions, like how to do things on earth. These are instructions from a supreme being. I like to call them commandments because some of the kids need to go, oh, I want to be a good boy, so I'm going to follow the commandments. Others go like, I just want to do what will work best because what's been working for me, and that's back to the formal institutions, that ain't working for me. I did not like who I showed up at church through all my life, but finally, through Christ, I'm learning to show up to church and enjoy it. It's like going to mental health ward, which is, I call my ward the mental health ward, and doing group therapy. And Jesus says, just one caveat: you need to not talk, um, except for to me. So I talk to the immortals because I have a spicy testimony, and it'll disrupt the, it's, imagine you go to group therapy and one guy just dominates because he's clever and he does whatever. He's always wanting to disrupt formal things. So Jesus says, shut it down, and then have this communion with me. So I'm able to go to church like somebody could go to the coffee house. Oh, I'm just going to sit here and ponder poetry. Well, you could go over here and do it here. Well, this is what they're talking about. Well, then ignore them. If that's what they're talking about, can you just focus? Can you feel the love? Because there's a lot of people here who are gathering in the name of Christ. And some of them are exuding a whole lot of love. They're trying. They're like, I'm a filthy sinner. And they're humbled and they're meek. And so back to the black sheep prophecy. Jesus told me that you're living in a day, Greg, when I'm about ready to pour my spirit down upon the black sheep, the ones who are out of the church. And some of them that are like you, that are in the church, but kind of hidden, got their white looking sheep coat on, but they're actually black sheep under that. I will pour down my spirit like I have upon you, and you'll begin to have charity. These people who have been kicked out of the church or left the church, however you want to frame that, they will have charity for their brothers and sisters. They will see what I see and you see. They will see these people who are under these really tight circumstances called formal processes and formal religion and church culture. And they will feel sorry for them because they're not getting enough Jesus. And they will go, well, I don't want to do it. A lot of them are like, I don't want to do this, but Jesus is telling me, go to the church, start going to church, and bring your leaven with you. Bring your tattoos, smell like smoke. So I'm looking forward. This is a prophecy that's going to be fulfilled during my time, and I'm looking forward to it because it'll just be funny because like I like to disrupt whatever's formal. That is true. And because that's my wretched self, because I don't want to just do that unless Jesus wants to do it. But he says he's going to do it. So he's going to bring these there'll be dope smokers, fornicators, and they'll say that's what they are. They'll say, yeah, Jesus still loves me, and they will come and testify, and it will blow the minds of people, because that's what's blown my mind, because I've already gathered with some of these outcasts and misfits, and I'm like, oh, you're in this mess. Jesus, you're in this messy person who would look so unholy. But those people, which I'm excited about, not all of them. Some of them like, I'm never going back to that church, and they are correct. But some of them will be like Nephites or whatever who got converted, and then they start feeling for their brothers who are in these terrible cultures where, like, and they look at the Book of Mormon, they grew up in these cultures where they're like, oh, hate the Nephites, kill the Nephites. So you're like, I don't want any of that action. But these black sheep, these outcasts and misfits, God will pour his love down. And God says, the first shall be last and the last shall be first. So when they come into the churches, what will happen is they will come in love on the white sheep, maybe who don't love them back. Well, I could say quite a bit they don't love them back, because it's awkward to have somebody who's smelling like smoke, who just recently watched porn, and they're talking about, yeah, I watched porn last night, but I turned to Jesus. That's kind of awkward here, but get used to different. And what'll happen is the white sheep, there's good white sheep, by the way. There's a lot of good white sheep. They will get used to different, and they will start loving back. So Jesus just told these in generalities that first the black sheep will come. That's the trend, is they will come in. They're like, well, why don't the white sheep go out and get them? Because, I don't know, scared or something. Or I think it's just Jesus' pattern. So what I've just shared is a prophecy. I could also call it my best guess that was inspired by Jesus. If people say, I don't feel comfortable receiving prophecy from Greg, oh, well, then just call it a good idea. Does it ring true inside your heart? Do you think that'll happen? Does it match up the scriptures that say the first shall be last, the last shall be first? Does it match up with scriptures that say he will exalt the low, the low? The answer is yes, yes, yes. That's what, so because I asked the same questions like, Jesus, are you just making this stuff up? I'm like, oh no, this fits with the pattern. This will happen. It'll be a general trend, which means you'll find exceptions to it. Well, some homeschoolers are idiots, but you can't say all of them are. In fact, the data is showing otherwise. And so this is how I look for prophecies to be fulfilled. It's just like generally over the trend. So I know what's coming. I've already informed my wife and family about like, whoo, my people are coming. Oh yeah. And I get excited about like, they're coming. They're going to occupy this church and all the churches. By the way, this is not just going on in the LDS church. We're going to other churches, people who have compassion. And final thing I'll say is, I suspect one of the reasons that they'll do some of these black sheep will do it is sometimes we need a little encouragement. You need a little carrot, not just the stick. Jesus telling you, get in there. We're going to have tribulations, so financial tribulations. The formal church, that's what the nature of formal institutions, like having a formal army or navy. It's handy sometimes when you need to be protected. Same thing with the more formal church. So the formal church will have needs. They can meet needs that these informal people might have for various things. And that's what God has put in my heart, that what's going to get resolved here during my lifetime or towards getting resolved is the interaction between the informal and the formal. So you think of the black sheep, the outcast, as informal energy that may not hit all the jots and tittles, but they are focused on the more weightier matters of the gospel, which is love of others and so forth. And then the formal institutions that are focused more and more on jots and tittles and so forth, things that get things done, so to speak, if you will. The informal needs the formal, and the formal needs the informal, and it always has been so. And so I'm sorry, I just dumped that whole prophecy on you, but it'll frame my what you were speaking of, like formal churches and institutions, their limits and so forth. That's the frame that I carry, that I received from Jesus, that puts me at peace with like, oh, okay, so this is your church. You're doing, so's the Catholic Church, the Baptist Church. You're doing whatever you want with that church. I don't have to worry about it. So it's not my job. My job is to love. So he tells me to go to church and love on the people. Well, some don't love me, Jesus. That's fine. Love them all the more. So I really do. When I go to church, I'll just sit and admire these different people. Because I've had people within the LDS church that I've always admired, that they've been good to me. My parents were good to me. It's just like, guys, I can't take that culture. And Jesus, I was looking for the wrong people to solve it. Mortals, are you kidding me? You think mortals are going to be able to fix that, Greg? And so I turned to the immortal, and he goes, oh, here's how you can find a peaceful way to walk with that. Because Jesus had a similar problem back in his day. Okay, I'll end my talking stick. Back to you guys.
Yeah, actually, what you said just reminded me a lot. You said I liked I liked what you said about history repeating itself, kind of a thing, like in the 70s and 60s. And I hadn't considered that, but it's a lot like there's like this pendulum swing where it goes between like having like all the rules and following all the rules and then revolting against all the rules. And I think everyone goes against that in their own life, but I never considered that it does that as a society. And actually, one of the things that kind of started my path, my current Jesus path, one of the things was that in 2018, when I was reading the New Testament and I was reading about Jesus' time, I was actually reading it to my kids and like a children's Bible stories. And I was like, this sounds a lot like our time. Like I was like, there's all these rules and there's just crazy, crazy rules. And there's not a foundation for them in like scriptures and stuff, and they're just like this culture of just rules. You can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that. And I was just like, and it's not actually scripture. It's just like, I was like, where does it say like, oh, like this has to be done? Yeah, there was just so many things. And so I was gonna say, so I just and the more that I research like the New Testament, the Bible, you just see this pattern again and again of just, and then you see Jesus, like today with my kids, we were talking about the prodigal son, like, you know, about those coming back who are lost, but also we talked about the idea, part of that story is when he's talking to people and they're like, why are you being friends with, you know, all these people, like those people. Actually, I'm gonna say those people. Why is Jesus hanging out with those people? Because those are the bad people, right? I mean, and that's what they're saying. Like those guys are the ones with all the problems, and I think a lot of us um, will feel like the brother of the not the prodigal son, where we're like, I've done everything you said. I follow all of the commandments to a T, and you're like, why are you celebrating this other one? You know, and so I don't know, that's just kind of, I just think that the patterns are they're very interesting, I guess is just what I wanted to say. You can go ahead. Hey, Jonathan, you had something?
Um, I did. You went a different direction, so I'll
You can go
let
back
me,
to your direction. It's fine.
um yeah, I guess kind of interesting. It is a pendulum that swings. But I have the feeling that the balance is perfection. Something like that. I'm not sure. I'd have to think about whether that's really true. But is it possible that the balance is perfection? The place where we stop swinging. And that actually sounds kind of comforting to me. The idea that the pendulum would stop swinging. Earlier, what I was going to say is that you made me think of the mission field. So many rules, I couldn't handle them. I did handle them. I did okay. I had a beautiful mission, very life changing, very wonderful. But an LDS mission, 20 whatever years ago when I was in my 20s. But yeah, it's and I get the reasons for rules, but it's oh yeah, it's like it feels like it's an endless subject for all three of us. We're all um in a very similar place. It's like we're all kind of right on that fringe. It's like Greg is still barely in the well, not barely in the church. I don't want to say that. He's in the church, but he doesn't feel like he can talk because it's not a place where, you know, he's kind of uncomfortable. Greg and I had a discussion on a video we did before where we talked about this. It's like he has the discomfort of being on the inside and feeling the rigor of all that yucky, you know, too much structure, and I'm just on the outside. And so I in that way I'm great, right? You know, like, oh, I love it out here. I don't have to worry about all that structure. You know, I just do the things that I feel like God wants me to do. But I have the opposite problem. It's the same problem that you've described a little bit, Emily, and that is that it's like I don't have a people. Like I don't know what to call myself. I don't know what to do. I don't feel like I fully fit in anywhere. And that's a real problem because it doesn't it leaves a hole in my life. So it's like there's, you know, whether someone finds themselves on the inside, you know, the one group of people who probably is not listening to this program and tuned out a long time ago are the people who are straight in the middle and they think that nothing's wrong. And how could you ever think that anything is wrong with our culture or anything with regards to my framework of belief? Those people, we already, you know, got rid of them a long time ago, I think, by our past discussions. But for people listening, I think probably if they're still listening, they have a similar problem. Either they're just on the inside like Greg, or they're just on the outside like us, and it's uncomfortable. It'd be, you know, if I could just go off into sin and just throw all cares off, you know, and it's I can just be, you know, but I'm not. I'm really a religious person with no place to go. So I'll pass it
Yeah,
back.
well, and one of the things Jesus has been using me for, because I've given my life over to him. I've been ministering to some people who've are out of the church, so they're my tribe, and their life is messed up enough, and otherwise that they qualify for the Greg service. But without trying, I've helped resolve a lot of their energy with regards to their antagonism with the church. Similar issues we're talking about, they just see what I'm doing. And what I realize is that people have to get used to different, like going to church differently with an open mind. Like I described to you in this. What if you just went to church and just said, like, I'm going to just go there like I'm at the lake, just ignore everybody. Kind of like when you go to the mall, just having a good time. Well, pay attention, everybody. Somebody's talking. No, I'm not going to pay attention. Well, there's somebody up there. You need to pay attention. Look, people are going to see you on your phone, and they're going to think you're doing. I'm looking up Jesus stuff. Well, you might be a bad example, and actually, I'm using a familiar, let's say, family familiar, where you might lead the kids astray. Well, if they know what I'm on, I could turn to them and say, hey, right now I'm looking up a parable so I can make a movie with Jesus. So if people knew what I was doing, like, dude is going big on Jesus. It doesn't have much to do with the talk, but I'm multitasking because I'll think, oh, Jesus, I want to respond to that. I want to raise my hand in Sunday school, but he just forbids it. Like occasionally I say, go ahead, but it's rare. And so I'm deep diving with Jesus, and like, oh, so Greg, you're just treating the church like it's there to help people, including yourself. Yeah, it's a room. I go there and we all dress nicely. It's kind of like going to a wedding or a party. Oh, really? Yeah. Do you love every single second when you go to somebody's wedding? Oh, this is the bomb. Woo. No, you got to dress up. Oh, this is like church. Yeah. And then can I have all these mints? No, you can't. There's a limited amount of mints. Do I have to bring a present? Oh, weddings are just wonderful. Do I have to wait? Do they have to do that cake thing? Oh, I'm going to cut the cake and pretend like we're having fun. Is she going to smash it in his face? Well, Greg, you're quite the cynic. What I'm telling you is, I always find it funny for people who are on the outside. I look at their life and I can see patterns. I'm like, yeah, you're bowing down or having to, whether you're at work, whether you're at the mall, whatever, you're doing the same thing that you have to do at church. And so what my invitation is, you can learn to do that at churches, but why do that? I would say, unless Jesus calls you to it, yeah, stay home and have home church. Like Jesus is having Emily, this is what I believe, do home church. Awesome. I think that's cool. And if he says, now you need to take those kids and stick them in church, but they may have to learn a new way. See, I struggled for a long time and I'd cry out to God. He finally showed me a new way to go to church. And it's like some kind of monk who's, he might be surrounded in the mall, people yelling, but he's just sitting there doing his little thing in his mind. It's like he's got his own little world. You could call it his own little Jesus Greg world in some kind of Jesus verse that he's building, and nobody gets in unless he wants them in. Oh, I'm going to open up a little portal here so I can see what the talk's about. Oh, that's interesting. So it's like he's listening to a radio at work. What's his work? Well, he's just sitting there at church, surrounded by people. And so sometimes, so that's, anyways, my back to how Jesus has used me to show other outsiders how you could approach church differently. But it would require you to approach church even different than you do. You have so many segments of your life, and I could document, I'm a sociologist, and say, oh yeah, so you're free from church. Now let's see, are there any other of these institutions that you're still bowing down to them? And the answer is yes. Go ahead.
So I wanted to say this before I go. I have to go. So I'll make a closing comment and then leave it for you guys to spend the rest of the hour. Number one, I love what you're doing with the painting. It's like there's all these colors coming out of Jesus. So I think that's great.
I agree. That's nice. Rainbow.
Yeah,
Jesus.
it's really. I'm going to be curious to see how that one ends up. It's interesting that it went this direction. I'll leave you guys to finish it up. God's been helping me in some ways to deal with religious people. Lately, he's been telling me they're characters in my book. You're going to need religious peoples in my books and my stories. You know, it's like you're going to need religious people. Why don't you try to listen more and don't try to, you know, because that way you won't feel so strange by their dogmatism. Because you're just listening. Like they chose to come down and to suffer through being such a pig-headed dogmatist so that you and God would be able to tell stories using their lives. It's like how wonderful that was of them to be willing to suffer through being so pig-headed so that you would have something to write about.
There you
So
go.
you'd have this character in your book. And it's actually helped. That's what's weird. Is I'm trying to listen more like, oh yeah, this would be a good character. And I
And
gotta go. I
they're
love you
probably
guys.
love you too. Yeah, they're probably appreciating your character too. I've got this guy I know who's an outcast. I can paint him within this parable of the prodigal son. Go have fun eating your pig food, Jonathan. We'll see you at church in a while. So yeah, I like that. I love that take. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I was just trying to. Oh, I had something I was gonna say and I forgot it. Part of what I think about too, though, is that I've always actually been a very strict rule follower, like for my whole life. Like I was thinking about growing up, I'm just been 100% like, oh, you say I got to do this, I got to do it. I'm very black and white, and it took some pretty major life circumstances for me to be able to let go of those things. So I feel like my life, for me, I mean, I think I've heard this before from other people. It's just a process of letting go, of saying, this is the way I want it to be, and then finding out it's not going to be that way at all, and it's okay, it's better,
Yeah,
and so I always I feel on that, like, just everything being so. I think I don't like to identify people as just like, I mean, I think we all have our moments where we're like pig-headed and we don't want to be open or listen, and it's just the timing's not right is how I look at it. I think it's not just like never for everybody, it's just not time, you know
yeah,
and that's what I think about. Like I think like the fact that you can't force. I don't know if I've ever talked about this before, but when I was getting my master's and learning about education, there's a theory in education, and I haven't looked this up for like years, so I don't remember who said it, but it was one of my things that you cannot force learning. It's this whole concept. Where, I wish I remember. I'll have to look it up. It's in my thesis somewhere, but it's the whole idea that you can't force somebody to learn. Like, and you really can't. Like, if they don't want to learn, you cannot force them. You
yeah,
can't. Um, I mean, you could try to make kids like behave and stuff, but like if they're not open, they're not going to be open, and there's nothing you can do. And so that's a concept that I love, and that I think is like a true concept. Is just you know people be what they're going to be, and they do what they're going to do, and you have to like just let go of that. That they're going to do whatever. I don't know. That's just kind of one of my thoughts, and so I've been trying to do that with my own children. Um, it doesn't always work because they might not choose anything. But like what I see all the time is children and people that have been forced to be one way, and then they revolt against it and never even want to come to Jesus because of the force.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I
And
do.
so I try to like, I don't know.
We've
I
and
try to make it a choice. I try to watch that. Like I try to be with my kids like, hey, would you guys like to say a prayer with me? Like I try to like make it a question instead of making it like this is the way it is. Or like my second child's 10 and he hasn't been baptized, and some people have been like they always ask about like, are you gonna get baptized? And I'm like, this is his choice and he doesn't want to. And I would agree, he doesn't feel like he's in the right mental space. Like we still teach him about Jesus and stuff, and he just doesn't, he feels a bit younger than his age, I guess is a good way to put it. Like he still is learning, and we're all still learning. And so I don't know. So this is this idea of just letting choice and letting people learn from choices. So it's again that whole idea of letting go, because the me of 6 years ago even would have just like totally been like, oh, I can't believe it that you're doing that and this, but and it's not always, and it's not easy to let people learn. And like I do it with like schoolwork too with my children. I really try hard because whenever I try to like make them do their homework, it's a fiasco. Like it's a wreck. You know, like I'm angry, they're angry, everybody's angry. They're not actually learning. They're just angry. They're just angry everywhere. And yeah, I don't know. Those are just some of my thoughts.
They're good ones.
I've got like a big smudge on my hand. I've got to get off.
Yeah, they're good ones. The structures that we've inherited because they have been so long in development in modern life, they seem natural, and they're actually quite far from it. So what you're speaking of, like school, homework, and so forth, uh, underlying assumptions of what's necessary for people to become educated and good, responsible adults within a modern society, and well-rounded and so forth. Um, the experimental location would be homeschools, where you got this wide range that ranges further than most any formal school is willing to take the risk. You've got those who say, we do no school, which for some of them means, yeah, we do zero school. We just have a bunch of books around. And those who do it successfully, they'll have a structure. They make it so tasty to engage. Maybe that's from the time their kid is born. The kid just wakes up seeing their parent just reading. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, just a second, I just got to finish this one chapter. Oh, well, that must be really desirable. Yeah, in fact, let me read it to you. And so they get read to and read to and read to. And the parent says, oh, now we're done reading, let's go out and look at bugs. Don't you mean let's do science now? I don't mean that at all. If I started going that way, I'd hate it. But homeschool is great if we're just going to look at bugs. How can we look at those bugs closer? Oh, mommy, maybe magnifying glass. We were killing ants with Johnny over there. Oh, let's do that. Let's kill some ants. No, hold it. Let's not kill them. Let's look at them. Why shouldn't we kill ants? You have these discussions that just flow out naturally. Like, well, when's homeschool going to start? It is, and it goes on all day. In no school. Oh, can you guys have some help doing these pancakes? And a month later, hey, you guys got the pancakes done yet? The kids say, oh, this is fun. I love making pancakes. And if you want pancakes, that's what you're gonna have to go do. And you're gonna have to grind the wheat. What? Yep, I'll show you how to grind the wheat. Next thing you know, these kids are grinding wheat, turning and selling pancakes. So you're like, when are you guys going to do homeschool? You're just out there selling pancakes with your lemonade. Yep, we're just seeing how it works. And that takes a special kind of parent and I've, when we started homeschooling, Jesus used that to instruct me about the world and what underlies the reluctance to have that level of informality, and it's fear. And the main fear is that your kids are going to get behind other kids. That's the sad thing. It's like, my kids are going to grow up idiots. They won't be able to feed a family. No one will like them. No one will marry them. And so these are like real founded fears. We have a society that perpetuates those. So you can watch Hollywood films. He was homeschooled. Ha, 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 you know. And so those fears are real. And it takes a special kind of individual that says, I don't care, I'm just going to do it anyways. And so back to the happiness I have of, there's going to be a new culture, and I call it Zion. 500 years from now, kids will wake up whole differently than we do, and they'll spend the whole day way differently. But the surrounding culture will support that. That the people that are raising these kids will have been trained to that kind of Montessori on steroids kind of approach to, you know what, God has put it into us, natural curiosities. Let's see if we can foster those and not freak out if one day it doesn't work. as long as it works maybe 20 out of 30 days, or even 2 out of 30 days. Then eventually, years later, it finally started blossoming in this child. And so parents, and that's, so I'm going to tie it back to what I just said, to spiritual development. So our spiritual development follows a similar trajectory as our physical development. They're not unrelated. And so sometimes we have to go to the rules. So like if I was to do art, I'd just like to just do it, what Emily's doing right now, just jump in it and like, yeah, I'm going to make a mess, and I could. And that's really what I'm good at. It like, no, I'm not going to learn all, because if you look at Emily's, when we started all these episodes, she showed us pictures of what people would call fine art and detail oriented or realism towards that. And then I look at that, what she's doing now, like, well, that realism would be harder for me. Yeah, because it follows all these kind of rules, the whatever rules there are. There's some kind of Pythagorean related rules. I know that how things are composed. That Mike Workman, an artist locally, showed me that one time. She showed me these circles, and I think you know what I'm talking about, Emily. Whatever these circular things and so forth. And so here's these art people that geek out in these formal like school, and they become familiar with underlying things that I wouldn't know, because I'd be like having to learn the notes, learning piano. I don't want to learn the piano notes. I just want to play the piano. Well, then your piano playing might sound very unfamiliar to people, just scatter, chaotic. They say, hey, Greg, I want you to play this. Well, okay, here's my version. And so maybe only one person will be entertained. That's me. But as humans, we have this desire to be understood by others. And so at some point, it's hard to just sit there and play the piano by yourself and say, I don't care if people can't hear it. I'm as good as Mozart. When maybe you're the only one that thinks so. Good for you. But eventually your sheep instincts will kick in, and you want validation from your wife or from somebody. Hey, doesn't this sound good? And you can tell they're faking. Yeah, that's good. And so back to, I'm going to tie it back to what you were talking about. Yeah, what we were talking about. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead if you've got a thought.
I don't know. I just keep thinking how, like you said, how life is. What I caught on is pretty much we all have a different way of learning. It's just how I'm going to say it. And at some point in society, it was decided that every child learns this way, but every child doesn't learn the same way, and every person doesn't learn the same way. And I think that's why coming to Jesus is really important, because of what Jesus did. We all have the ability to learn in our own way and to learn at our own time. It wasn't like, if you don't do this by this age, although society and culture says if you don't do XYZ by this age, then you're wrong.
You're
if
damned.
You don't,
yeah.
If you don't go serve in this way, you're wrong and you're bad and you don't love Jesus.
Right.
Like that's a cultural thing that really happens.
It is. Yeah.
But it's not a true. That's not something that Jesus ever said.
Nope.
Ever. Like, the rich young ruler, I want to follow you, Jesus. He's like, well, give up everything you have, then you can come follow me. And then the rich young ruler, he went away sorrowing because he just couldn't give it up. And that's the end of that story. And maybe there was a time later where he decided that he was ready to give it up, but the time wasn't right then. And if you're not ready to forsake and follow, then it's not. I don't think there needs to be this like pressure that says like you're wrong. Like, I think something I've really tried to do, well, I actually really liked earlier, it kind of reaches back to like your idea of like, you don't call them commandments, I call them things to make your life easier. I think that's what you call them.
Instructions.
And I like that because I have a really hard time with instructions. There you go, instructions. Because I have a hard time with that too, where it's like, if you don't do this commandment, then this will happen. And I've held on to those things my whole life that I feel like if I I get like severe anxiety. Like if I don't go to church, I feel like this massive anxiety and shame and um but it but then you have to question, like, and then I try to work around that, but then I don't know, it's just like a whole interesting, I don't really know what I'm trying to say. I guess one of the things I'm trying to do is just everything is about learning. So part of what I've been doing on this painting, this actually ties into what I've been doing on here. Oh dang, stuck my hand in stuff again. Okay, so something I've done on here. So sometimes when I do art and stuff, part of this Jesus series, one of the things I did was how to do like paint Jesus the wrong. And the whole point was that I grew up with all these rules of art. Like I even have a sketchbook called The Secret of It All. And I would write down like everything my professor said, and I would do like every single thing, and I would practice all the different rules. You always do this way. With dark paint, you always do thick over thin. So white paint is always light. You always do thick white paint and thin dark paint. That's how you make oil painting look really nice, and it has to do with the way that the paint dries. And these are just some different rules. Like you always mix red, yellow, and blue. You always do this. You use these colors and you mix them this way. You do all these things. And so today when I started, and I was cleaning out this little container here. It was really dirty. And there was just, so the other one of the rules is always you don't mix more than 2 or 3 colors because it turns to mud and it makes your painting look really muddy and it doesn't give you really pure vibrant colors. That was one of the things that I was taught. And so today, purposely, I actually took my paints and I put out a ton of different colors. I did everything except black. I just didn't want black. It's just too overpowering for this. And this one's very colorful, but I mixed them together and I purposely made mud. So I mixed like 5 colors together. I did like every color and I made different types of mud and then I tinted. And then I was like, well, what if I paint thick? So I'm doing thick with dark and light I'm removing. So it's completely opposite of, quote, the right way to paint is what I'm doing. The other right way to paint, what I was trained with, because I came from this very strict background of you do a plan. So the design process is, and I actually teach the design process to my students because this is the design process. You brainstorm, you make a plan, you sketch it out, you plan it, then you do some practice, like these are practice ones, and like with my other big paintings, I would have like sample ones, and I would practice painting that head like several times, different angles. And then you get your whole plan and you have your practice plan. It's all good. You've got your colors and your shadows. Then you begin the final piece. And then the final painting, you keep working on it and you get feedback and then you keep working on it. And then you reach like kind of the ultimate goal. And so when I started this series, and you have like a plan, like you're looking at like painting realistically, like I would go out and I would sketch plans, I would shoot models, I would take photos. That's what I mean when I say shoot. Don't to be confused, people. I would photograph models and they call it getting reference and seeing like which direction you're gonna go. So it was a very involved process is what I'm saying. Before you even actually started painting, like 90% of the process was planning. And so when I decided to do this series, I was like, how can I throw it out the window? And I'm like, I can't look at anything. That is it. Because I was so, and I had always had, I was so, they call it reference. I call it reference dependent. But it was like I had to see it and then I could do it and I could see it and I could do it. And so trying to do something where I can't see it and like there's no way for me to know the right answer, like with Jesus, I've never seen Jesus. So I don't know what he looks like. And so you have all these things of like, this is what society says he looks like. I don't know. I mean, Jesus didn't even have a beard until like 1300s. He might not even have a beard. Who knows? And then some things I've read, like, what did Jesus really look like? Well, he could have had curly hair. He lived here and he could have had dark, short, curly hair. What did their clothing could have been really short, like you see in The Chosen, because that was culturally what it was. It wasn't like these long robes that you see. That wasn't their culture. Or, I don't know, maybe he didn't always wear white. I mean, we just have all these like cultural things. And so I was like, so those are some of the things, like that's when I paint, and that's something that some people really like about my art is none of my Jesus, they're kind of all starting to look the same now, but especially when I first started, like some of my early ones, like everyone, he looks completely different. He might have long hair, he might have short hair, he might have a big bushy beard, he might have like a little short beard. I always do a beard because the beard seems to be the most recognizable thing. So it's about communicating what's Jesus. I'm like, pretty much you do any blob and you put a little beard on it like this and you've got Jesus. and you got to have some kind of dark mask, you know? Like I'd look like Jesus if I went like this and give myself a little beard, you know. I could look like Jesus too. Anyways, that's just kind of some of my thoughts. It is very much part of my religious process. Is what I'm saying. Like I compare it all. You know, we learn through parables. I learned through doing art, and I learned through this thing. But the whole idea, again, that I've learned, that I've been trying to let go of through this, is don't, because I'm a people pleaser. I have a really hard time letting go of what society and what others think. It's very challenging for me. And I'm trying to let go of that because I don't think it's right. I'm really working on, like, I need to let go of not being perfect and not being the center and not always knowing the answers. And that's really what I'm trying. And that's what, yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. I guess that's my,
Awesome. And that's, I do want to emphasize, recently I did a Jesus Street preaching episode for about an hour and a half. And that was what Jesus had me emphasize. It was actually the training he's put me through since 2015. And it's heavily oriented towards get used to different, do things different than what you were taught. Think of me differently, like, you know, so you've heard that he has me talk about him as my imaginary friend who is real, who's my therapist, who is Jesus. Emphasizing you got to use your imagination, Greg, because what he wanted and what he wants from me is to get close. That whatever friend I would love the most, then that's how I need to imagine Jesus, because the truth is that's who he is. He's the best friend you could ever imagine. And he's one that will condescend. That means he will come down to his children. And, you know, just like a really good parent. What if you're a parent that's just kind of stoic and you have a kid that just really needs somebody to play, but there's nobody else that can play with him? You may have to, in order to have that kid develop right, you may have to practice, stop being stoic for a moment and maybe for lots of moments, and just get down there and act like you're, you know, Barney, or act like you're Bob the Builder with that child, and let loose as best you can. You're like, well, I'm a stoic. I didn't learn how to do this. I feel like Bruce R. McConkie. I can't get out of this. I want to read my kids the Mormon doctrine, not play house with them with a blanket fort. But I'm kind of teasing Bruce R. McConkie, who's passed on. I always believe if you're talking about somebody, they listen in. What are they saying about me? Because they can learn some stuff. So, Bruce, I know you probably had a personal life that you did not share because you weren't growing up in a really transparent culture. Believe me, we're still not transparent on that in our church culture, but we're getting closer. Jesus is shaking it up. And so being able to, Jesus, my point there was Jesus will do that. That's the thing. Is just like the best parent you could ever have, even if he's a stoic like Jesus. As Jesus, I'm naturally stoic, yet I'm willing to come all the way down to where Greg is, to have him like me. Okay, Jesus, here's the deal. I can like you if you could like Tigger in the 100 Acre Woods. Okay, bouncy, chauncey, fun. He goes, oh, I love that. And like, oh, cool. And then some people report, no, that's how my Jesus is too. So the Book of Mormon actually is the only time you'll hear this in the scriptures or the Bible. There's a verse where he talks about my Jesus, my Jesus, which I love, and a lot of other religious people do. They're like, oh, yeah, that actually sounds right. That we each have our own Jesus, but doctrinally, there's a lot of tension there. Like, hold it, you guys worship a different Jesus. Yeah, we do. But what that is just simply Jesus even talked about it. When saw I thee a stranger, Lord? So he'll appear as a stranger, fallen by the wayside, or when were you hungry, Lord, and I let you in, or I didn't let you in. And he was saying essentially that I can shapeshift, to use a word most people wouldn't use, but yeah, he can shapeshift. So Emily is actually Jesus. This is what Jesus looks like when he's dressed up as Emily. This is what he does. An approximation. So I don't literally think that she's Jesus, painting Jesus, but I do parable wise and practical wise, that's what Jesus is trying to emphasize. Treat Emily like you would Jesus. So anyhow, that's my take on it, is that Jesus is available for whoever we are, and he'll take us towards him. And maybe my understanding of Jesus will change, that I'll 10 years from now I'll go, oh no, he really is stoic. I've turned into a stoic. That's the main Jesus. He was just lead me on. It's the only way I'd follow him, is you had to go, okay, here's what Greg needs. So I do believe in a Jesus who will do that, but I actually believe in a Jesus who is a lot of fun, like the Jesus of The Chosen. Yeah, I think that's my Jesus. And I think a lot of people are like, oh yeah, that's my Jesus. So yeah, and I think Jesus made that movie, and he used Dallas Jenkins to do it. So I literally think Jesus made that movie and the Jesus Revolution. But I can't tell you, that's just a belief. I can't tell you that I know that to be true, but I don't have to. I believe it strong enough that I pray for The Chosen. I geek out on The Chosen, and Jesus has me do that. Anything else, Emily? It's probably about time to wrap up, so I got to go get ready for formal.
Yeah, I love The Chosen.
Yeah, me too. And I like your painting. Where,
Yeah,
if I wanted to buy that one, if I was a millionaire or 100,000-aire or 10,000-aire or $100 heir someday, I hope to be that. Where would I get that?
This one's a bit bigger than some of the others. This one's probably right around like 400.
Sweet.
I've worked on it probably like about a month actually, that I've been working on it. But yeah, this one's about 400. I'm really close to being done. I think I'm about done for working on it today.
I really
actually
like
feel like
the
it's
eyes.
really close to just being done in general. There's a couple
Yeah.
areas I don't like it, but I'm kind of at a point where the paint needs to dry in order for me to, like, I think I need to take a break from it and come back to it. But
It's beautiful. I like it. I can see it.
hands and my
I see his crown. I see his crown of thorns kind of implied there. That's what I
didn't
see.
try to paint it backwards, but I could see how you could see that.
Yeah.
There's definitely like a big thing coming off here, and I could definitely see that.
And I like his eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's because I snuck in and used my right hand.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But you know what?
That's right.
Because I could actually get some detail.
She's painting with her fingers.
I don't know. It's hard to just do.
Yeah. Love it. Well, excellent.
Yeah, well, this time I did mostly with a palette knife.
And where would
Yeah,
people,
but because it's with a, like,
where would people go
sorry,
to buy
you guys
that?
saw me using this.
If they wanted to purchase that?
If they just Google me, like Emily Powell Art,
Mhm.
they'll find a link to one of my social media or to my
Your e-
existing website, and then I'm working on putting together a Jesus Best website that they can find me if they just Google. My name should be on. You can see my name on my photo, right? Can you? The one that I'm painting.
Oh
on?
yeah,
It's
yep.
my name, like right down here.
I can. Yep. I just brought it up. Yep. You can see that. That's right. Yep. I see it. Emily Powell Art. I see that when I pull it up. So
Yeah.
yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, just make sure that, yeah, as long as, or we could put a link in the description, I guess. That's something we could do.
Well, good. Well,
But yeah,
thanks for today. I like talking about Jesus.
that's that. I mean, this one, I would say it's not quite done, but it's really close.
I love it. It's very nice.
Yeah, what do you think? I'm trying to think like of a good title or good.
Yeah. A lot of our episodes still need
Jesus.
titles. I was hoping. What was the suggestion?
I'm like, we can call it Coming to Jesus the Wrong Way. I
Yeah.
don't know.
All right.
The
Yeah.
wrong way to come to Jesus. I think
Yeah.
that's funny.
I
Kind of
I
the
would
wrong
like
way to
that.
come to Jesus.
Come. Oh no, that
I don't
sounds good. You're poetic. Come to Jesus the wrong way. I came to Jesus the wrong way. I like it. Yeah. Let's officially,
Yeah, me too.
Jonathan or Emily. Just I like that. So I vote for coming to Jesus the wrong way. Because if you're coming at all, hallelujah for that. Yeah, I like that.
I'm gonna call that "Coming to Jesus the Wrong Way." This
Yeah.
was 226. We finally finished that. All right. So that's
Okay.
called "Coming to Jesus the Wrong Way."
Yeah. I like it. Coming to Jesus the wrong way. Yeah. And wrong, of course, is the perspective. It's like me saying, Jesus is my imaginary friend. You have to understand that phrase. It's paradoxical. And so the wrong way would just be like somebody, outsiders, who came a different way. Oh, you went the wrong way. Yeah, I'm still here with Jesus. Yeah, but you took the wrong way. Yeah, I did. Yep, that's the stranger fall by the wayside, or the prodigal son. Yep, you went the wrong way. Yeah, I did. But guess what? Jesus is having a
Yeah, you
party
did go the
for me.
wrong way. You should have done it my way. Would have been
Yeah,
better. You know?
exactly. Yeah, and letting people go the wrong way is a very important.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, go ahead, go the wrong way. Yeah, I like it.
yeah, you might go the wrong way. You might get in an accident, but you'll
Yeah,
learn.
you'll learn. You'll know what ways
You're not
not to go.
with-
Yeah, you'll be able to warn other people.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love it. All right, well,
Yeah.
Emily,
Yeah.
anything else? I'm about ready to sign off
Okay.
for us.
Nope.
Okay.